My name is John Linden, CEO of Mythical Games. I've been in the gaming industry for a very long time. So I started off in PC console, made a game called Call of Duty for many, many years. So I got to see kind of big games at big scale. Moved in the mobile industry. We had a game company. We worked with Marvel and Star Wars and a bunch of great products that we ended up selling to Niantic. And we've been building a Mythical Games since 2018. So we've been pretty early in the gaming space. And what I want to share a little bit is what we're seeing at scale. Why does it matter? What are we seeing? How is this working? And where do we think this is going from here? So I think at first I'd start off with is that I think there's some terminology we have to start eliminating from the Web3 space. You know, this is no longer about bridging the gap, right? We hear that a lot. It's not really, but the gap's been bridged. So we're bridging that already, right? And same thing with that. I think everybody talks about onboarding the next billion users, right? Well, I think companies now are starting to do that as well. And I think that's the really important thing. Gamers right now are coming. And I'll share a little bit of what we're seeing with some of the projects we're working on. But it's a very, very exciting time with games out in the market now. So we believe that there's already millions of gamer wallets, even in our ecosystem alone. If you put everybody together, it's a big ecosystem already. But I think literally within 12 months, we'll see well over 100 million gamer wallets in these ecosystems. So what we've seen in gaming is a couple things. One, we see three massive transitions happening to the gaming ecosystem. And I think this is really important. There's a lot of entries of how people can kind of come into this, and I think Web3 is going to drive a lot of this. So we're really focused right now on a lot of the economic tech. You call it GameFi, call it economic tech, whatever you want to call it there. But I'll go through kind of what we're seeing there. We also see kind of social tech, the way people engage in these worlds. I'll talk through a little bit of that on kind of what we're seeing there. And then honestly, we think even the cloud gaming distribution is going to be revolutionary for the gaming industry. And I believe Web3 is going to really drive a lot of that as well. So I thought I'd start off on the economic side. So gamers have been trading in games for decades and decades now. And they really do it a certain way, right? It's very much, I want these items and I will give you these items. And Web3 kind of came in and did it this way, which is more like a financial trading system. And it didn't really kind of line up. And I think this is one of the big challenges that Web3 had in gaming early on, is we didn't quite deliver what gamers wanted to. So what we were thinking about now from our perspective, and I think the industry in general, is we have to build the way consumers trade. And what we've thought about is they trade in terms of liquidity. I want these 3 items for these 2 items. And they're not necessarily looking at bids and asking floor prices and all that. That's just not how the general consumer in gaming thinks. So I wanted to share a little bit of what we've been seeing with some of the games. These are the 4 titles we have right now. We started off with the top 2 games with a game called Blanco's Block Party. We then did an American football game with the NFL called NFL Rivals. We just launched, as of last week, if there's any football fans here, we launched last week a new game with FIFA, so it's about 7 days old. And then if you're fans of Pudgy Penguins, we have a game coming in about 60 days here that we partnered up with them. And all 4 of these games we think are kind of mass audience driven. So I talk a little bit about NFL. So NFL now, it just finished its 2nd year. This game has, nearly, actually we probably should update that. I think it's close to 7 million players now have joined this one game. And I think that's pretty exciting. But the most exciting part that I love is that we came into this market with a Web3 game against a company that's been around for 35 years. So if you're familiar with American football, there's a brand called Madden from EA. And their game has been around literally for nearly 4 decades, so nearly 40 years at this point. And our game with this Web3 is actually higher rated in the app stores than Madden is right now. And I think that's a really, really important thing. I hear all the time, gamers hate NFTs, gamers hate Web3. I don't think that's true. I think it's how you implement it, how you kind of get this technology in front of gamers that really matter. And we've seen this in both stores now. We're actually outrated the Web2, the original incumbent, with this game. So what we did is we kind of started off and built on top of that. And I think that's a really key thing. When you're introducing consumers to a new technology, you got to kind of step them through it. So I thought I'd share a little bit of data here. In year 1, when we came out with NFL, we did a couple things. We basically had this whole concept of Web3 trading. People can buy and sell. We had a web marketplace, a mobile marketplace. And then we added the concept of doing it in the game itself. Let people trade right where they're playing. And it was a pretty awesome first year. We had about 20% of our revenue came from trading. 80% of it came from kind of traditional gaming mechanisms like battle passes and card packs and all that. But still, we were very excited. We were like 20% lift in revenue just by letting gamers trade with each other. In year 2, we made a couple of changes. So one, we introduced this concept called quick trade. And I'll go through this in just one second. But basically, our view of quick trade is, can we let gamers trade the way they like to trade, but using this concept of Web3 behind the scenes? And it worked for us. We had a huge opportunity. Our revenue now went from 20% of Web3 trading to 65% of revenue came from Web3. So over half of the money we made in that game came from Web3. And we thought that was an enormous, enormous change. And this year, our next season 3 starts in August, and we're even taking that further, right? One thing we are looking into is AI, right? We're finding a lot of gamers understand the concept of AI agents. They understand the idea of almost having a sports agent that helps trade for them. And I think we're going to see that even grow further. So we've really iterated nicely. We've seen tremendous, tremendous impacts from incorporating Web3 very natively into a Web2 experience. So this was probably the biggest thing that changed our business. This is probably the biggest innovation we've had as a company. And we call this quick trade. And the idea behind this, again, is how do you trade like a gamer, right? But using Web3 rails behind the scenes. So basically how this works, Travis Hunter is if anybody's familiar with NFL, Travis Hunter just got drafted into the NFL a few months ago. His card might be going for $90 US right now in the market. Well, the average consumer, they can come in and they can buy it. They can put it on a credit card. They can buy it with crypto. But the average consumer still doesn't really necessarily buy a $90 digital asset. You know, crypto traders might, Web3 people might, consumers generally aren't going to put $90 on a credit card. But what they will do is they'll play these games. And what we found is that what you can do now is instead of buying that, I can say I want to trade for that. And when I say I want to trade for that, that kind of shows up in the left side. And it says, okay, $90. And then all of my other digital assets show up on the right. Things I've earned in the game, maybe something someone's given to me, but all of my other assets show up on the right side. And they're all being priced in real time because Web3 has enabled this kind of massive order book. So in this game, NFL, we have probably 50,000 open orders ready to be done at any given second. People are putting out bids and all this from a global perspective. And I basically have prices on almost all of my assets. We cover about 85% of all assets in a given second. So I can now start checking the ones that maybe I don't want anymore. I just, as a player, as a consumer, I don't really need these anymore. I really want this one on the left. And I can start selecting those, and maybe one's $20, one's $40, one's $30. And the system now says, oh, $90, $90. So the consumer now can hit a button and say trade. They didn't pay anything. It was a cashless transaction. They received what they wanted, and they got rid of what they didn't want. So why is that important? Well, what's important for us is when that transaction happens, we're effectively buying that asset from one seller anywhere in the world. They're selling it for that $90, and people are real-time buying those at the same time. So we're selling those to 3 different buyers around the world. So we actually generated 4 transaction fees from Web3, a multi-legged trade that the consumer initiated, but they didn't pay anything. And this has been the big reason why that revenue suddenly took off, right? You enable the ability to trade very natively. It doesn't even cost the consumer anything, but they're facilitating these global transactions. And that's been very exciting for where we've had. So I thought I'd share a little bit about Pudgy Party. This is a game, again, coming out very soon here. I know Pudgy Penguins is around. They're very active out here as well. And what we're doing right now is we're bringing out this brand new game. So this game is really made for a mainstream audience. This is not necessarily made for a purely crypto audience. It is tied into the Pudgy community. It does basically allow us to take the Pudgy IP out to the masses. Players around the world can do this. And basically there is a company already doing a similar style game, but without a Web3 economy. So what we've done is we've kind of taken the best-in-class games out there, and we've really rethought what does Web3 mean in this kind of party game genre. What's exciting about that is that one of the companies out there right now, it's about 7 years old now, but they have 400 million players in their game. So what's driven that game in a big way are things like tournaments, right? Players being able to kind of join these tournaments around the world. They're not even tied into the game itself, right? A lot of them are unofficial. they'll do them on X, they'll do them in Discord, and it's all a very manual process. So we're very excited about what happens when you start building these systems so that consumers can really run their own events. And I'll share a little bit more on that soon. But we're very excited. We think that the concept of enabling a game like this with Web3 is going to dominate the space. And doing this with Pudgy, we think, is a really exciting part. So then I want to talk real briefly about FIFA. So FIFA now, actually I need to update this slide. It's no longer coming in 2025. It's actually out. So game's about 7 days old. We are on track already to have over 1 million people in this game in the first month alone. And we haven't really even started marketing the game too heavily yet. So what we're seeing is that people are coming into Web3 at a very fast pace. We'll add 1 million people to FIFA just this month alone. So what we're excited about with FIFA is a couple things. One, it's a mobile-first game. We made this game for mobile with FIFA so that anyone on the planet that has a smartphone can basically pick up and be part of this world. And we think that's actually really, really exciting. We built a great gameplay. People are loving it right now. We had somebody already play 200 games a day, which I don't even know how it's possible. With the amount of time in the day, they've basically dedicated a full-time job to playing this game, which is interesting. So here's the real piece, though, of why are we excited? Why are we excited about Web3 coming into FIFA? Well, one, FIFA has about 3 billion fans worldwide. About 1.8 billion of those are gamers. So it's a very, very large audience. But there's already been some data out there. There used to be a FIFA game with EA. There no longer is an EA FIFA game. They split up a couple years ago. But that game was pretty remarkable. During the last World Cup in 2022, EA's game, which was called FIFA Mobile at the time, had over 500 million players install that game. 500 million people access this world. As I mentioned, our game already, we've had over 2 million matches in the first week. We believe this is going to be 20, 30, 40, 50 million matches a month very soon here. But EA had an issue with their game, right? That game is very global. There's a lot of players from all around the world, and a lot of them won't spend money in a game, and that's okay, right? So one of the most amazing things already in the first week is that EA's game, we use a stat called ARPDAU. So it's average revenue per daily active user. Basically, how many people are playing the game, how much money are we making per player, right? Their game right now, that's been around for many years, it's now called FC Mobile, so it's no longer a FIFA-branded title. That game does about 4.5 cents per day per player. And what we're seeing already in the first week, and we're not even fully optimized yet, the marketplace isn't in the game quite yet, but we're already seeing 5 cents just in trading alone. So already in the first week, we have more trade and we're making more revenue from just the trading component than the entire previous game made per player per day. And we think that is really, really remarkable. And as we add things like quick trade, as we add the marketplace in the game itself in the next month, we think those numbers are going to grow. So what this effectively does is we've used Web3 to monetize a segment of these game players that might not have paid before. And that's really, really important for the survival of a game, for the ability to market a game. If you can suddenly increase that revenue that you can put back into the ecosystem, it becomes a very, very powerful mechanic. So the next thing we've also seen too is we started seeing AI, we saw a lot of growth in our marketplace in the last few months. We were kind of wondering, where is this coming from, right? Where is this massive growth coming from? And we started seeing more money per player, we saw more transaction volumes per player, and we thought it was a little odd. And as we dove deep into it, what we found is that 20% of the revenue now is coming from AI agents. Players themselves are building their own trading systems in things like Claude and ChatGPT Operator. And what they're doing is they're letting the players are letting it trade for them. They find what matters to them and they set up the rules and set up the prompts, and it's now trading for them. So we're jumping into this in a big way. And one of the things we're thinking about next is let's give every player an AI sports agent. It's literally a character in the game. I can go talk to my sports agent. I say, I want Ronaldo. I want Messi. Maybe I can't afford him in the game right now, but the agent can start helping you transact. And so how do I trade? How do I trade? What do I trade next? What do I level up next? And we think this is going to be a whole new level of what happens with Web3 with a mainstream audience. So we're very, very excited on kind of where this is going. So what I want to show is kind of two things right now that I think are absolutely crucial for anybody thinking about games or thinking about where this goes. One is that this is kind of where our games are going already. So as I mentioned, our games just alone, we're going to see roughly about 75 million wallets just in the 4 games we have out already. And that'll happen within 1 year. So we're already seeing some amazing growth. You can kind of see where FIFA's starting to kick in, and that's going to be an exciting time. Just our games and games that are being built on our platform as well, we think that number will exceed 150 million wallets within 12 months. So as I mentioned, players are coming. They're coming into the ecosystem at a very, very fast pace. And then on top of that, as you start seeing more and more revenue coming into the game from Web3, it starts to be a very interesting formula. More players coming in, a lot more of that revenue is coming from Web3. So as I mentioned, NFL, year 1 was 20% of revenue. Year 2, 65% of revenue. We're not sure quite yet what happens when we add the AI sports agent. I anticipate a number very high north of even 65%. So we're seeing great growth from just enabling this tech in a consumer-friendly way. So I want to spend just a couple minutes here on what do we think comes next, right? As I mentioned in that first slide, economic tech has been our main focus. If you can start shifting how players are spending in games, that becomes a very, very powerful thing for the gaming industry, which is already about a $300 billion industry. So if we can now start making new ways of how players can spend and how they earn in the game, that becomes really, really interesting. But the next one we see is things around engagement. So again, I'll use a game I made. I made a game Call of Duty for a long time, and a game like Call of Duty, the bigger that game gets, the more people in these ecosystems, the more fractured it becomes. Social goes to Discord, social goes to X, social goes to YouTube. Tournaments are being set up by different groups here. It's a very fractured community. And I think what gets interesting now is you can start unifying that ability through Web3. And I think this is one of the key things. So if you're thinking about applications in gaming, I think this is the next major piece here. So we're looking at things like this as well. We're thinking about how does Web3 dominate this concept of social gaming? When you're interacting with these digital worlds, you're interacting with virtual worlds, how do you basically use this to unify everybody? And we start seeing some really interesting things, but in particular, the one I'm most excited about is tournaments. So the idea of having an infrastructure out there that anyone can really tap into, whether it's a brand wanting to throw a tournament for your game, it's a prize pool that's being put out, it's players setting up their own private tournaments. If me and a couple of my friends want to set up a six-person tournament, we can do that. And that becomes, I think, a very, very powerful ecosystem. And in fact, what starts happening in Web3 now is you can now link these together. I sell something in the marketplace, I can take some of that in currency and enter into a tournament. So you're starting to connect what previously has been a very fractured economy. So this is something we're looking at. We think there's so many different ways. The ability to have wallets that actually can be multi-tokens, multi-chain. This is a new area. I'd say out of our games right now, the million people that are coming into FIFA this month, probably 95% of them have never done anything in crypto. They've never done anything in Web3. So it's a big opportunity to use something in social to help get them into the space, right? They've been playing a game, now they're maybe interacting with the marketplace, they're starting to understand that. When you can start bringing that into social and other aspects of gaming, you really are bringing on a lot of people into this ecosystem very quickly. So we're very excited on where this goes. We're going to be kind of piloting this with our games, but we really want to open this up. If anybody's building in social engagement, let us know, because I think we want to set this up as an open ecosystem so that anybody can basically tap into what's soon going to be 100 million gamers for different types of products. So where I want to end this was with some real data. One of the things I think is really fascinating right now, if you look at all the top chains, every top chain right now, and how much money is being flowed on a daily basis. I'm not talking about DeFi, I'm not talking about fungible tokens, just actual asset purchases. People buying digital items, an NFT, whether it's a Pudgy or it's a FIFA item, where is this money kind of flowing? And what's really, really interesting right now is, Ethereum is still the number one. They're still the kings and queens of the space, right? They're dominating still right now. But what's really interesting is 3 of the top 9, and I did cut off number 9, but that's another gaming network, but 3 of the top 9 chains now are only gaming. That's how powerful gaming ecosystems are becoming. So literally, we're sitting right now with the Mythos chain. That's what we use. So the Mythos chain, we're actually number 2 right now, only to mainnet Ethereum. Now, here's the most exciting part. Look at this, the middle column there, on number of transactions, right? So Ethereum is number 1 by far. They only do 16,000 transactions a day. That's it, which is a pretty small amount for everything you hear about. Our games already are doing about 115,000 transactions. So what that shows is gamers trade. gamers interact. It's not an ebb and flow. They don't come for a drop and then leave the community until the next drop. They trade every single day. They're building into this, and I think that's a very powerful piece. In terms of buyers, we're still in a one-day period. We're second, I think, only to Solana right now. So Solana does have a decent amount of buyers, but just with the couple games we have right now, we're already seeing games are driving. 1 or 2, 3 games are driving more volume than the entire Solana ecosystem, as an example. So I think, again, gaming is going to be a very powerful piece. Also, gamer utility is very interesting. So gamers are not the type of consumers that are moving money around. It's not like I made $100 here, and now I'm going to suddenly try and move it to this DeFi thing, and then I'm going to go from DeFi to this, right? They're consistent. They keep the money in their accounts. You can start seeing the value every single month. We have more and more and more volume that's being put, or not volume, value that's being put into the wallets. So this is a pretty exciting opportunity as well. Transaction volume, as you can kind of see already in 2025, we've exceeded everything we did in 2024. And again, this doesn't really necessarily take into account what's going to happen with FIFA, what's going to happen with Pudgy, but we're seeing just tremendous volume growth from gamers. They are understanding what's happening now. And you can also see the wallets. It's been very consistent. We were adding, I need to update this as well, we were adding about 4,000 to 5,000 wallets every single day. Now with FIFA, we're adding about 40,000 wallets every single day. So it's really, really remarkable, almost a 10x in the last month for us. And then the last piece that I want to kind of share is that I really believe that game ecosystems are one of the few that can create a very sustainable product, sustainable tokenomics. And I think this is really key. So one thing we had done about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we basically introduced the concept of, hey, we're going to burn every transaction, right? Players are coming in, they're transacting over and over and over. Let's burn those transactions, the transaction fees, the gas fees that come off of those. And what we've seen already is we see a huge amount of tokens burned, right? So what's happening now is basically, you can already see kind of a little bit, it's hard to see on that chart, but I think we peaked on number of tokens in our ecosystem was about 735 million was kind of total circulating supply. Now we're down to 731 million. So we've already are taking 2% a year out of the economics, right? And I think that is another really, really fascinating part about gamers. Consumers are coming in. They don't really care if the token is trading at a 20-cent value or a $20 value. They're basically able to just keep buying, right? They're spending $100 of currency to try and get messy. And I think that gets exciting on where this goes. So I think gaming is going to be one of the early industries that's going to have fully sustainable tokenomics because you're playing to the consumer audience. So basically, it's a really interesting flywheel. So again, players are coming in, the more games you add, the more consumers you come in, the more transaction volume, the more tokens you're going to burn. I do think this starts creating a pretty amazing flywheel for the industry. So again, an industry I think everybody needs to be watching right now. And that's really the end of the presentation. Like I said, I think what we're seeing right now is we're already seeing actual real changes to economics in games. We're already seeing real changes to the social side already. The ability to engage hundreds of millions of consumers, and soon I believe billions of consumers are already happen. And we're also able to create kind of real sustainable tokenomics. So the future of gaming is absolutely here. It's going to be huge, and I really believe Web3 is going to drive most of that innovation in the space. So thank you very much.